There's a game called Perfect Vermin, released in 2020, that opens with a near-perfect two-part subversion. Here's part 1. You start the game in an elevator, which deposits you in a fairly normal-looking room. A floating tutorial tells you how to walk. There's only one place to walk to in the room, which is a door on the other side, and the same tutorial tells you to left-click to interact, the same prompt a million other games have used to get you to open a million other doors. So you left-click. Unexpectedly, delightfully, interact in this case means smash with a big hammer. The door explodes into chunky, physicsy bits, and from this point forward, the hammer is never out of view. You've got one way of interacting with the world, and it's this. For as simple as it is, the smashing in Perfect Vermin feels incredibly good. The energy with which things fly apart really sells the power of your hammer. You can smash big objects multiple times and reduce them into even smaller bits. You can smash open a fridge and then smash all the objects inside. Perfect Vermin is a micro indie game, one I had never heard anything about, and in these first minutes I thought this might be all it is. Reduce an entire office to rubble. Who hasn't had that desire before? And then, the second part of the subversion. By the way, I am going to spoil 2 games in this video in their entirety. Both are available on PC for free, and together they'll probably take less than an hour to play. They're linked in the description. Also, content warnings for both the game and the video. This is gonna be kind of a gross one. A desk is in the lobby. I crushed it. A frame hangs on the wall. I shattered it. A random office chair sits by the exit. Some furniture in the office is not furniture at all. It's meat. An office chair full of meat sits by the exit. A toilet with fleshy insides lingers outside the bathroom. The break room shouldn't have 2 refrigerators, and it doesn't. Press left click to interact and smash the door off its hinges, letting its guts leak onto the floor. Once you learn what you're looking for, they're not hard to find. The office is immaculate, except for these outliers. Chairs in the middle of the floor, fridges out of place. There are 5 of them on the first floor, and as soon as you bring your hammer down on the last one, a third bizarre thing happens, which is the screen flashes static, and then your entire field of view shrinks to a display behind some news anchor who croaks at you to go back to the elevator so you can try this again. In an interview with Indiepocalypse Radio, Perfect Vermin's developer Maceo listed a couple primary inspirations. One was the artist Sao Hui and his installation titled, "I Want to Play God." The parallels between it and the game aren't hard to find. Fleshy and grotesque, Sao Hui's art rips apart everyday objects to find the interiors pulsing with startlingly realistic viscera. He's given classical pieces the same anatomically obsessed treatment, fitting David with a full, dissected brain and filling the Venus de Milo with meat. He deliberately walks the line between art and gross anatomy, realism and absurdity, and his artist statement, hold on for this one. Increasingly uneasy and dissatisfied with merely describing surface appearances, artists now attempt to plumb the inner reaches of things, an agenda that apparently moves into science or other fields. I think artists really want to play God more than anything else, and will stop at nothing to construct a truth that validates the self. They first delude themselves, then maybe move on to people around them. I really wonder to what extent these self-deceptions and constructed truths can strike a nerve in the knowing onlooker. It's a beautifully self-deconstructing statement, questioning the biological realism of his art at the same time as it contextualizes every leaking chair and dissected piece of marble as a constructed truth that can't quite maintain the illusion. Is he suggesting that the innards of his sculptures are reality, weakly hidden by their domestic trappings? Or is it the reverse, that he's attempting to replace reality with one of his own, where even something as benign as a sofa throbs with inner life? He ends with a non-answer that, to be honest, sums up a lot of this platform as well. I love it. In order to deceive others, we explain with theory after theory, but it all ends in laughter, and sometimes we even amuse ourselves before God laughs. Perfect Vermin could probably be described as pitch-black comedy, but the only moments you're likely to find funny while playing are the first couple minutes. Each level presents roughly the same challenge, finding the vermin and crushing them. The newsman uses disconcerting language. More chambers need cleansing, he says. But the rest of the game is more of an unraveling, both gameplay and framing drifting further and further from solid ground. One of the floors of the building is upside down. The geometry has become uncooperative, he says. He is coming apart too, battling nosebleeds covered in pustules and swollen flesh. In another level, you play 2 floors at once, and now the newsman is the one who's uncooperative, his body hanging limp in the middle of the set. In the level after that, both body and architecture have shifted beyond recognition. The office floor stands on its side, your hammer unable to reach the vermin as you plummet downward. Eventually, you reach the side of the building, the side which is now the floor, and break the window and fall into the horizon. And as you do, a fleshy mound wearing the newsman's jacket gurgles on his desk, seeming to speak with many mouths at once. I always hated my mother, he says. I lived in terror of becoming like her. What horrible comedy that in the end, I even die like her. Sometimes we even amuse ourselves before God laughs. There are far more vermin in this level than in any previous, and the level's geometry won't let you crush them. I was cruel to you before, he says. Your task was always impossible. My hope was never fair. He says that it was good to live. The level ends. And then you're in a dark, organic hallway that somehow seems to move forward and backward at once, and you smash a number of polyps in that hallway, and then it ends too. While aesthetically, the game's targets are a direct homage to Cao Hui, Perfect Vermin is totally indebted to another work of biological transgression, David Cronenberg's Videodrome. The hallucinatory 80s film is challenging to sum up in a few sentences, but ends up centering around televised violence seeping its way into the real world. Max, a television producer for a CD cable network, learns of a Videodrome, a series of tapes that are essentially snuff films. As his superficially professional interest in the tapes mutates into obsession, his reality mutates as well, everything around him twisting into violent and horrible versions of itself. The film is a satire, probably, a critique, certainly, but most of all, it's just an absolute roller coaster of grotesqueries. Roger Ebert said, "The characters are bitter and hateful, the images are nauseating, and the ending is bleak enough that when the screen fades to black, it's a relief." He hated the movie. I'd probably say the same thing, and I think it rules. A double feature of Perfect Vermin and Videodrome reveals more than a few parallels. There's the most obvious, like the final TV of the film exploding with entrails in exactly the same manner as the game's Vermin. Halfway through Videodrome, Max's hand fuses with a pistol, essentially mandating that the only way he touches the world is through violence. The game's opening joke, revealing that your only method of interaction is a hammer, relegates the player to the same exclusively violent arena. But the thematically densest area of connection is probably the layers of disconnection that each piece is working through. There's constantly some level of removal between Max and his actions in Videodrome. He's just a cable producer trying to find the best content. He's hallucinating. He's in a waking fantasy. It screens all the way down, reality abstracted enough that it can pass as entertainment. And, despite our control over the actions of Perfect Vermin being much more direct than the passive experience of watching a movie, the game pulls the same trick. By revealing that our office smashfest is part of a news broadcast, it morphs the player from a madman to a kind of actor, going through the motions to make good television. It lets us attribute our actions not to some kind of individual mania, but the semi-fascistic language of the TV anchor, urging us to go faster, not let them spread, cleanse the vermin. What differentiates Perfect Vermin from its influences, though, is where it ends up. The building falls sideways, you walk through the meat hallway, the game seems over, and then it starts again, in a sterile doctor's room. It's the first time you haven't held a hammer. The door opens and closes. In no uncertain terms, an unseen doctor tells you, the news anchor now, the real you, that you're dying. Cancer is consuming his body, a disease that he'd rather ignore in pursuit of the biggest story of his career, but a disease that will not ignore him. It retroactively explains, though horribly exaggerated, the series of mutations the newscaster experienced throughout the game. But it also adds another layer to our own actions, the player doing the smashing. The newscaster mentions a massacre downtown, which shouldn't really be a surprise to us. Refrigerators aren't typically filled with guts. But metaphors can work in multiple directions at once, and it's the newsman's last confession that now gains a new resonance. The doctor tells the newsman that he has cancer, and cancer isn't a general synonym for death here, but a very specific one. Throughout the game, you've been smashing organic growths in places they're not supposed to be. Chairs in the middle of hallways, extra toilets and bathroom stalls. And yet they keep popping up, fleshy imitations in the wrong places, overrunning every floor while your efforts to destroy them leave the entire office in shambles. The newsman's urging to wipe out every floor, find the vermin, his obsessive need to cleanse, makes more sense when directed at the medical treatment that's ravaging his body in an attempt to stamp out the cancer. So is that it? Is the point of Perfect Vermin to be a grand cancer analogy, highlighting the brutality that even fighting the disease entails? I'm not sure. It's not that. But like Videodrome, boiling it down to only one target feels like it requires ignoring tons of other subtext pointing in other directions simultaneously. It is a game exclusively about hitting things with a hammer, and yet I still don't feel like I have a full read on it. I really wonder to what extent these self-deceptions and constructed truths can strike a nerve in the knowing onlooker. I still think it's easier to parse than how Fish is made, though. Released on January 14th, 2022 by a group of Swedish students, How Fish is Made is a game that bills itself as a wet and squalid narrative-driven horror game about choice. Which isn't misleading. How Fish is Made is a game in which you play as a sardine in some sort of industrial purgatory, a foreboding series of metal hallways and cavernous rooms littered with other fish to talk to. There is, notably, no swimming in the game. You flop along the floor until it's finished. And the finish really is the point of How Fish is Made, or at least that's what every dialogue section would have you believe. Within the first minute of the game, another fish asks if you will be going up or down. Actually, the fish forces you to make a decision, a dialogue choice right off the bat, up or down. And although almost every subsequent conversation in the game references the choice, you will never receive any more information on what it could actually mean to go up or down. That's not to say no one has an opinion on it, though. You encounter a tiny mackerel which shrieks,
"Up, up, up, I've always known it was up, I never asked, I never changed, never lied, the water has it wrong, the flesh has it wrong, everything goes up, up, up in the end."
But nearby, another, trapped in a six ring, assures you that the real answer
is down.
And you can trust him, because the fact that he's trapped is a confirmation of his
most oily brain.
Many of these fish ask you questions. Do you know what you're going to do? Are you going to go up or down? And the game doesn't really require any consistency from you. You can say the same thing every time. You can agree or disagree with every contrasting voice. You can, in fact, even change your mind. Though doing so makes it feel like you've been lying to every fish you've talked to before. There is no information to be figured out here, not really. There aren't a secret set of clues that tell you what the better choice is. There aren't some fish that are inherently more trustworthy than others. It's just a choice made in the dark, up or down. A coin flip that everyone can't help but give the weight of the world. Probably the most relatable fish in the game is tucked in a corner. It looks just like you, actually, just a little bigger. Its family has gone up, its best friend has gone down.
"Why would he do this to me?" the fish asks. "I don't want to choose if I can't know exactly how it will turn out."
On some level, the analogy feels obvious. Up or down, the good place or the bad place, heaven or hell. This feels especially true given that basically every fish seems to have an unspoken "when I die" at the end of their declared choice. There's no going back from this, you can only choose once. But the game is set on dissuading you from viewing it this simply. For one, if down was hell, why would fish be so amped on it being the correct way to go? These characters aren't just resigned to down, they're set on it. Perhaps most powerfully of all, just before the end, a big guy can give you some information it feels like you aren't supposed to know. He's been watching everyone else choose. He's counted how many have gone each way. But he asks you twice. Are you sure you want to know that information? Of course I do. 199 have gone up, he says. 474 have gone down. 474 have gone down? More than twice as many as have gone up of their own volition? He was right. It didn't make the choice any easier. There is more to how fish is made than the ending. There's the architecture, which refuses to pick between dispassionately mechanical and drippingly anatomical. You may flop through what appears to be the ribcage of a giant eel, only to emerge into a cold metal room with an enormous press ready to descend on a pile of fish. Just after talking to your nervous counterpart, you bounce down some sort of esophagus. This is the only game I've ever played with a trypophobia warning at the beginning, and my god, does it earn that warning. The walls pulse with malformed lotus seed pods, each socket vibrating with life. There's a scene where you encounter another fish caught in the gears of a door and blithely push down on a big red button, tearing it apart. That fish didn't get to choose up or down. But I'm doing you all a disservice by neglecting to mention another scene. Really, the scene, the gaming moment of the year 2022. A full 20% of how fish is made takes place in one brightly lit room. You enter and strike up a conversation with a parasite that's eaten the tongue of a sea bass that he refers to as his friendo, his co-worker. He tells you that his buddy always says teamwork is the soul of success. Though, of course, his buddy can't corroborate this because the parasite you're speaking to has eaten his tongue. And then, indebatably the most horrifying part of the whole game, the parasite tells you that he knows just how to incentivize you. With a musical number. Later on in the game, you enter a big dark room. Look, what do you want from me? You want me to tell you what this musical number means? Fine, you just tell me what Finnegan's Wake means. Tell me what Rothko means. The little parasite puts on a top hat and a Q-tip and dances around with other fish for a solid 2.5 minutes. The background images flash past, each grosser than the last, parasites and decomposition and fish flesh. It is a song about living with it and dying with it, and if we're to interpret the images behind the choreographed dancers, the uncomfortable middle ground between living and dying. Pink skin turns into black mush, snails full of parasitic worms throb unwillingly. Big text tells us that the next time you see a raw meat twitching, don't worry, it's safe to eat knowing it's very fresh. And then the tongue eater shows up and shakes its ass at us. To take this performance entirely seriously would be a mistake. It's supposed to be funny. And it is funny. And maybe that's the point of the whole thing, that everyone in the whole game is just consumed with this question they have no way of knowing the answer to. They're living with it, and they'll be buried with it. It's a joke. It's a farce. An inspiration for how fish is made, as funny and strange as the game itself, is David Lynch's Children's Fish Kit. A mostly conceptual idea that Lynch described as like a model airplane kit, you know, where you get the pieces and assemble them. But with a fish. Can you swim like a fish? Can you smell like a fish? The joke, of course, being that a fish is not like an airplane, and you cannot put one back together once it's taken apart. A dead fish is a dead fish. I don't think how fish is made is actually that nihilistic, though. No matter which way you go, up or down, the curtain drops for a moment and you get what feels like a direct address. It tells you, in one way or another, that everyone is going through it. And it absolutely sucks to hear that everyone is going through it, because other people going through it doesn't make it any easier or more clear for you to go through. But they are going through it, and so have you. After that, you either end up as part of an eldritch mass in which all thoughts wail simultaneously, in which you are a swelling god of no purpose, or you end up as part of a fish sandwich. They're kind of the two most different endings you could possibly receive, and they're also kind of the same thing. Is one of these better? Does knowing the answer change what you would have told the fish along the way? I don't really think so. What matters is what we heard just before this. That pain, that uncertainty, are universal experiences, and maybe acknowledging that makes the unknowable choice of up or down a little easier to swallow. My favorite scene in the game isn't the end or the musical number. It's the penultimate room, maybe the grandest in the game, with spotlights and walls of seed pods, and a final fish waiting in the middle. The lights flash on as you flop into the room. It feels climactic. The fish tells you that you've already made your choice, that this isn't about making a decision, but a test of conviction. And then it laughs.
Did you believe me just then? I'm just a fish in an imposing room.
On a very obvious level, both How Fish is Made and Perfect Vermin are about death, about the ways people and fish grapple with the inevitable. The newsman from Vermin could just as easily be a fish in purgatory, refusing to go up or down, no matter how much pain the resistance causes him. They are also, unignorably, games that are obsessed with gross shit. Nothing in either of these works is pretty. There is no nobility in suffering, no beauty or virtue gained from ignoring what's coming. I think Perfect Vermin views the struggle, therefore, as a sympathetic character flaw. As the newsman mutates, growing more and more grotesque while refusing to leave his post, we can look back and think that we would have done it differently. Why did he care so much about this story? I can say, enlightened. Doesn't he know he can't take it with him? But How Fish is Made is a rejoinder to this line of thinking. No, it says, he didn't know, and you don't either. There is no practice run for this, there's no knowledge of what lies beyond, and the people declaring the only choice is up know exactly as little as the people who refuse to accept anything except down. A lot of people are going through the same thing, and they're all going through it alone, together. I've said before that the real measure of a game's longevity isn't how long it takes to beat, but how long it sticks with you after you've beaten it. These games are barely the length of bigger titles' tutorials. They are whirlwind tours of the grotesque. And yet either due to their grossness or their unexpected profundity, or some combination of the two, they've stuck with me, like a friendly parasite that won't let go. Tell 'em, friendo! You might think I'd use this video about various gross topics to recommend an absolutely disgusting audiobook, Naked Lunch or Chuck Palahniuk or something. Wrong! It's another edition of Jacob's Short Story Corner, sponsored by Audible. This month's pick is the collection Orange World by Karen Russell, a sublime collection of stories about people attempting to live in our environment, a purgatorial space in various stages of decay. There is really everything you could want in here. Haunted houses, a romance with a bog girl, deals with the devil. Maybe my favorite story, The Tornado Auction, is this wild portrait of a farmer raising a tornado like a prize steer, an inherently destructive force he can't separate himself from. Orange World is exactly the kind of fiction I use for my own inspiration, and honestly, it's pretty likely it'll show up in one of my videos in the future, so get ahead of the curve and listen to it now. With Audible. Audible has an absolutely enormous library of listenable media. It's never not had something I wanted to talk about, and you get a free audiobook a month every month, and you get a month free. by going to audible.com/Jacob Geller or texting Jacob Geller to 500-500. I've said before, and will say again, that short stories are probably my favorite literary format, and listening to them read aloud just makes sense whether you're driving somewhere or walking the dog or doing dishes. I love Karen Russell's collection, and you can get it free along with a 30-day trial by going to audible.com/Jacob Geller or texting Jacob Geller to 500-500.